Now, to understand the perspective of Indian Constitution, let me divide our Constitution into two aspects. One, which I will refer to be called as the soul of the Constitution, the part of the soul of the Constitution, and the other as the body of the Constitution. See, we understood that this Constitution is nothing but a supreme law, okay, mother of all laws, because every other law will find its validity from this particular supreme law, that is Constitution, right? Like for example, Rig Ved. When we talk about Hindu law, Rig Ved can be considered as the supreme law when we talk about Hindu laws, right? So likewise, see, this Constitution speaks about entire country, not only its polity, but also it tells what is the psyche of that country is. It talks about its polity, it talks about the psyche of that country. It is basically the reflection of a country. Constitution reflects what a country is like. So that's why we term it as Lex Suprema. That means supreme law of a country. Now, if you want to see the nature of that country, you can see its constitution, right? By looking at that constitution, we will be able to see what is the nature of that country is, what is the polity of that country is, what is the psyche of that country is. Okay, in India, if we go to our oldest civilization, okay, oldest civilization, by that I mean the type of society which we had in the ancient time, in the oldest civilization we find in India. We find that in India, the man used to follow this particular type of belief where might was right. Okay, might was right, where there is some supreme power or supreme energy which we used to term it to be called as might, and we used to believe that that might is right. Okay, and this type of condition was there, we find during Paleolithic age, during Mesolithic age, etc. in India. Okay, then in Neolithic society, in India, for the very first time, we find the need for a social order. We find the need to have a social order, because society, to become society, must be based upon interdependence of right. Okay, it should be based on interdependence of rights, and this interdependence of rights can only come by law, can come by law. So this law is nothing but an instrument of social order. This law became an instrument of social order. Okay, then when we move from the Paleolithic society to complex societies, we find that the binding force is always law. The binding force is always law. So now the question was, who will accept a law? Or first of all, there was a fight that who should be the lawmaker here? Who should make this law? Who should be the lawmaker here? And who will accept these laws? So then there was a concept which was introduced, that was, we had a need for sovereign. Now this sovereign is that person that person whose law everybody will accept, whose law everybody will accept, this sovereign. Okay, now when we analyze the different stages of our country through the history, we find that there was various type of sovereign which was there. Various types of sovereign we find which was there. If we go to the primitive society, we find there was monarch, which who was sovereign, right, whose law everybody accepted. Then time changed, time passed. Okay, with that many type of sovereign was coming from this primitive type of society, from the type of sovereign as monarch, till the time today where we have this we the people, we the people, where the sovereignty lies. Till this time our society developed, right? From the different type of situations we have seen, the different type of conditions we have seen in the structure of governance in our country, then we saw that the shift of sovereignty from the monarchy to the we the people we have understood. Okay, now what is the importance of this sovereign? We have understood that sovereign binds this society by making something which is called a supreme law, right? This sovereign binds the society by making this supreme law, and all the other laws will have to find its validity with this supreme law. Okay, now if any law is not finding its validity with the supreme law, that particular law will be against this and it will be declared to be void, right? In India the supreme law is constitution, right? Constitution, and any law which is against this constitution will be declared as unconstitutional, and it will find no place, that law will find no place in the country, that law will find no place in this country. If I have to give you some examples, in Indian Penal Code we can see the section 303 in 1983, in the case of Mithu Singh versus State of Punjab, that this particular section was declared fully void because it was against the constitution. Also we see section 497 of Indian Penal Code, it was also declared as fully void in 2018 in the case of Joseph Shine versus Union of India. Also we saw that one more section, that is of Indian Penal Code section 377, in 2018 some part of this particular section was declared to be void in the case of Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India. So these was the different laws where we have saw that when it goes against the constitution, it finds no place in the country, right? What about India? In the initial part where I divided constitution into two aspects, one is the soul aspect, one is the body aspect. Now when I apply this aspect in our country India, we find that the soul aspect, the soul aspect of the constitution has two more aspects. One is the basic ethos. Okay, one is the basic ethos and the second is our basic philosophies. Okay, see, this ethos does not come in one day, but it is a process of centuries, right? If we see India, we can see the Indus Valley civilization. We had Indus Valley civilization, we had Mohenjo-daro, we had Lothal civilization, we have saw Harappa civilization. What we have found is there was, in these civilization, we found that there was tolerance, there was worshipping of nature, worshipping of nature, there was commerce, right? When we see our time from prehistoric to this India which we have today, okay, to this India which we have today, we find that nowhere in the world ethos can be missed. Okay, if we see our Vedic age, okay, we see Shrutis, we see Smritis, we see Upanishads, okay, we see various Samitis which come. We find the concept of republic, we find the concept of democracy in these ancient texts as well. The reference of these philosophies, these terms which we have today, we find the reference of them in these ancient texts also. Even Rajan was governed by rule of law. If we see our ancient time where the king, we call them as Rajan, he was also governed by rule of law. Okay, so right from the earlier age, we have this concept of tolerance very well inclined with our dharma, right? With our dharmas. Okay, when we see then different types of empires came in India, like Mauryas, in which Ashoka for the first time brought tolerance, first time brought tolerance in the form of non-violence, secularism. You can find all these things which was there. He encrypted on Ashoka's edicts, the different type of stones which is there showing the time of Ashoka. You can find that has been put on those edicts. Then we see Gupta empires, okay, where we find the concept of international trade was very much prevalent. There also there was an adherence to international law. Okay, even in Ramayana we find this story where the uh, agent, or what we say the messenger, was respected on the basis of international law, right? So when we go to South India or North India, we see it, the the country was all the different parts of that country, the time, the ideas, the principles which we have in our constitution today, it was already initiated, right? So the constitution is not telling something new, but it is just a reflection which we find of our ancient history. It is a reflection of our ancient part. If we take Indus Valley or any other type of civilization, we already find that type of principles was followed by the people of that time. Okay. So see, the constitution is not a book of law, but a book of entire country. The constitution is not just a book of law, but it is a book of entire country. We find unity in diversity. We call ourselves as Indians, right? This is not just a book of law, but it unites all the country together. Okay. And also when we see the scenario around the world, many things happened in reference of constitution. When we move from India to understand the world in the respect of constitution, we find in 1215 we have this Magna Carta, where for the first time common man wanted his rights. This common man wanted his rights, and he forcefully took his rights. Forcefully took his rights. Right. Then we find there was American Revolution, there was French Revolution for the fight of liberty, equality, and fraternity, etc. We find this in the different parts of the world also. People was one way or other fighting for these general principles. Okay. Then in the unification of Italy, we see in Germany, which shows the reflection of fraternity, right? Then when we see the different type of industrialization in our country, industrialization, science, colonialism, these all come with their inclusion in the new society. We find socialism, communism, which came in our country. So all these things became a part of our Indian constitution as well. When we talk about world history, it also became the part of our Indian constitution, while the general principle which was prevalent around the world was have been inclined. All these influenced our making of our Indian constitution. Okay. So all golden ideals of all countries have been blended in the different kinds of colors which we have in our constitution. So as I mentioned, our constitution, I divide it in two aspects for understanding. One is its soul aspect and one is its body aspect. We find the soul aspect which reflects or which have been reflected in our fundamental rights, in our directive principles of state policy, in our fundamental duties, while we find our body part inclined in our polity. Okay, we have the concept of union, we have the concept of state, we have the concept of local authorities, etc. Local authorities, etc. This aspect of soul, okay, which is reflected in our fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy, fundamental duties, it not only shows the ideals which we get from our ancient civilization, from Indus Valley, from different types of civilization which we had, but also the situation which was there in the world level, all have been covered in this aspect of soul. Okay, this soul reflects India of my dreams. India of my dreams. Okay. It shows our lofty ideals of mankind. It tells us what I have to do. Rights of an individual, even against the state, can be enforced. So these all things was there in the grassroots level, okay, of our democracy. When we see our polity system, the body system, very well the constitution compartmentalize these things, but all in a mixed way. We have our 29 states. Each state will have its own subject matter to govern. We have in 7th schedule, we have union list, we have state list, we have concurrent list. Very well we have divided the part that who will govern and how they will govern. Okay, we see that in India lives in village. India lives in village. So there was a need of grassroots level democracy. Grassroots level of democracy. So that's why we also introduced the concept of local authorities, right? In Article 73, 74, we have panchayat for village, we have municipalities for urban areas, right? We find that, so these all the aspects are there in the making of our constitution. Okay, we find that our constitution, see, now India's constitution is the largest constitution after Yugoslavia. Before it was Yugoslavia's constitution. Now India's constitution is the largest constitution, and we find that the body structure of our country, of our constitution, okay, it stands on three pillars. Okay, that is, one is the pillar of, this body structure stands on three pillars, that is our union, state and local bodies. Every trier, that is union or state or local bodies, it stands on three pillars, that is legislature, executive and judiciary. See, at union level we have parliament, right? We have Lok Sabha, we have Rajya Sabha, right? Then we have executive bodies, right? Also at the state level we have state executive body, we have state legislation, that is legislative assembly, legislative council, right? We have local bodies for making uh, of local rules and all. We have executive powers given to these local bodies as well. We have gram panchayats, we have municipalities. Okay, these all things have been very well integrated in the system. Okay, now after understanding that this aspect was there in the development of constitution, see how the constitution was born, which we see today, the constitution which we see today, how it was born. Okay, see, during Hindu rule till Gupta's period, right, there was no such constitution which we have like today. Also when we go to the Muslim ruling, there also we did not have this type of constitution. Britishers, British for the first time bought the system of acts, okay, which they called it to be a common law system. They imported that in India. Okay, they imported that type of system in India. So basically, if I have to divide during British time, the development of constitution, I can divide it in some phases. Okay, that is four phases. I will divide it in four phases. The first phase I divided from the coming of East India Company as a trader. The second phase, where there was Battle of Plassey, where for the first time Diwani rights was given to British India Company. Then in the third phase, there was Government of India Act, which was bought in 1858, where India passes under the crown. India passes under the crown. Okay. Then in fourth phase, we have Government of India Act 1935, which is one of the major source of our Constitution of India which we have today. In a while, when we are going to discuss about the different sources of constitution, there I will take you to this understanding that what aspect we have taken from the Government of India Act, which is of 1935, which became one of the major source of our constitution. So these was the different phases in which we developed this constitution. Okay, now let us take a small break, then we will start our understanding about the different stages of development of constitution. One by one in the aspect of 10 stage, I will take you to a brief understanding of the development of constitution. Okay,